you get bumped out, come back in, please mute yourself. If you can't see my screen, go back out and come back in and still mute yourself. I'm going to start out with the code of ethics and just kind of look at it. So most often, always in the indirect practice, which everybody says everything is community, that is not true. That is not true at all. Indirect practice includes anything that helps the client that doesn't actually, actually working with the client. So part of the code of ethics tells you specifically what supervision should look like and what you should do. Okay. There is a new version, there's a 2021 version of the code of ethics. It's not free yet, and it won't be on the test. Okay, so just know that won't be there yet. But it does talk about the importance of self-care. That's high on, there's a whole section on self-care, as well as diversity. Okay, so when I say indirect practice, when I say supervision, I'm talking about how you run an agency, the management style you use, what supervision looks like, what supervisors can and cannot do, and then what that would look like in a question. So whether you're at the LM or the LC, assume that if you're not already, you're going to be at some area where you're in charge. One of the things I think that really does a lot of us disservice is in the social work program, we've never had any business program, any business classes, right? So if you worked your way to the top and now you're around the agency and you're having to do budget, and you're like, what the heck? So little business classes would be nice, definitely. Okay, so always remember the purposes, the principles we have. Okay, so service, social justice, dignity and worth of a person, importance of human relationships, integrity, competence. Okay, so those are the things that we're always going to go. Our goal is this is what we live by. Okay. We believe that people need people, right? Importance of human relationships. Okay, so let's go down, and as we go through the code of ethics, supervision it starts at the bottom. And remember, supervision looks a lot like the same relationship that you have with your client. And I'm also going to tell you, if you're a supervisor and this is how it works in your agency, the test does not care. Sorry, just doesn't care whatsoever. Okay, so you're always looking at making sure that you understand what the question's asking me without throwing in your 2 cents worth, because they don't care. They could care less. Okay. So, of course, we start here with our ethical responsibility to colleagues. We're going to be respectful to colleagues, right? When, of course, this always comes up when there is a concern about the colleague that they're drinking too much or they're doing other things. The first thing I'm going to do is always go to my client first. We'll go to my coworker first. Okay. I'm not looking to get them in trouble. I'm looking to help. Okay. So again, confidentiality. Social workers should respect confidential information shared by colleagues in the course of their profession. Okay, same sort of thing. Truth is, we shouldn't be discussing colleagues. Our colleagues shouldn't be discussing cases, and unless we have permission from the client, right? But we do it anyway. It happens always. But we're not supposed to talk about anything unless we have permission of the client. Interdisciplinary collaboration, INTER, always means more than one discipline, right? INTER. If it's INTRA, intra, we're all the same discipline. INTER means that we're different disciplines. Okay, that's the same as a multicultural collaboration, same thing. Social workers for whom a team decision raises ethical concerns should attempt to resolve the disagreement through appropriate channels. If the disagreement cannot be resolved, social workers should pursue other avenues to address their concerns consistent with the client's well-being. And you'll see those questions on the test, that you're in a multidisciplinary meeting and everybody doesn't agree, right? And some of the choices are just like walk out, give up. So I cannot sign that treatment plan if it's unethical for my discipline, right? For nurses, doctors, they're very different. But if there's something unethical or I don't agree with in that plan, if I sign that plan, I'm still responsible. So the code of ethics says I'm really supposed to, work as a team, okay, and look at people and work with people to try to get us on the same page. Okay. I like this one. Okay, so you'll see I've seen this verbatim sometimes. If you're finding if you have a dispute with a colleague, social workers should not take advantage of a dispute between a colleague and an employer to obtain a position or otherwise advance the social worker's own interests. So if one of my colleagues is having an issue with our boss or the supervisor, anything that, I can't use that like that little in to benefit me. Like, oh yeah, look, Pam's in trouble. She's about to get sent off. I'm going to run and take Pam's clients. Can't do that, okay? Can't do that. Don't take advantage of that. Consultation, so a consultant is an outside person that usually comes in, and you're paying that outside consultant. So if you're in private practice, you might have a consultant as opposed to supervision. If you're an agency, you have supervision. Okay, so social workers should keep themselves informed about the colleagues' interests of expertise and competencies. Social workers should seek consultation only from colleagues who have demonstrated knowledge, expertise, and competence. So if you're in an area and a client comes up and they have an anorexia and you are not specialized in that area, that's not something you have is out of your scope. Make sure if I'm going to refer them, I refer them to someone who has experience. It's never refer them to another social worker. I am the very best. There's no better social worker than me, ever, ever, ever. Okay, so I'm not referring it to another social worker. I'm going to say, if it says refer to a social worker who has expertise in this area, perfect. It might even say refer to the pediatrician who has expertise in this area. Okay, what I'm looking for in that question is not just referring to another social worker. That's not okay. Okay. Of course, you can't sleep with your colleagues. Supervisors or educators should not engage in sexual activities, can be inappropriate with your students. And I've seen a question about a site supervisor who was dating an intern. So not okay, not okay, not okay. Same thing with incompetence. If you believe that your colleague is incompetent and they don't know what they're doing, okay, the social worker should believe the social worker colleague is incompetent and hasn't taken adequate steps to address the incompetence, should take action through appropriate channels established by the employer, the agency, the NSW, regulatory bodies, all of that. Okay, that's after I have talked to them first. Okay, so I have knowledge that they're incompetent. I should consult with the colleague when feasible and assist the colleague in taking remedial action. Again, when I'm going to the colleague, it's professional courtesy. I am not trying to get them in trouble. We're peers, and I'm trying to help them really figure out where they need to go next. Okay. Unethical. Okay. So social workers should take adequate measures to discourage, prevent, expose, and correct the unethical conduct of colleagues. So if I know about established policies and procedures for handling concerns about a client's unethical behavior, I should make sure I know what the rules are, right, in my area, in my state. Okay. If I believe that a colleague has acted unethically and should seek resolution by discussing the concern with the colleague when feasible. So I'm going to do that first. I'm still trying to go back to my colleague. I'm not trying to get them in trouble. I'm trying to help them. Okay. And then, of course, if that doesn't work, then I'm going to go up the chain of command. It says regulating bodies or regulating bodies. So in your area, it may be the licensure people in your area. It might be the it's usually the board. It's usually the board. Okay. So social workers who provide consultation or supervision, it doesn't matter if it's face-to-face or remote, and that is not new. That has always been there, even before we did, COVID hit. It's always been there, and we are not having questions on COVID. So it takes about 10 years to go from event to research, right, to get here. So it'll take a while before you see anything on the test about COVID. So social workers who provide supervision or consultation should not necessarily not should have the necessary knowledge and skills to supervise or consult appropriately, and should only do so within the area of knowledge and competence. So you cannot supervise somebody if you're not familiar with that area. Okay. Social workers should not engage in any dual or multiple relationships with supervisees in which there's a risk of exploitation of or potential harm to the supervisee. Okay, so what that looks like on the test is, so let's say that one of my supervisees is getting married. Okay, so the question that comes up, she invites me to her wedding. What do I do? Okay, so the same as with the relationship with a client. I do not want to make it detrimental to my supervisee. That is not the goal. But I also don't want to exploit her. I don't want her to feel like she's in a position that she has to invite me because I'm her supervisor. Okay, so that's not okay. So when you're looking at those questions, you're given some choices, and it's probably the same way that it is with anything else. You're going to weigh the pros and cons, right? Look at the reason you should go, look at the reason that you shouldn't go, and then make a decision. Okay, so yeah, the goal is not to ever exploit anybody, whether it's the client or whether it's going to be my supervisee. Not okay. If you act as educators for students or trainers, again, only provide knowledge in your expert area. Don't teach things that you don't know anything about. Social workers who function as educators or field instructors for students should take reasonable steps to ensure that clients are routinely informed when the service is provided by students. Okay, so if a question talks about you're an intern, should you share? Yes, 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 yes. The client has the right to know that you are an intern. You're studying under somebody. When you go to the doctor or in the hospital and you see the people with their name tags, and it'll say like resident, what's it say? I'm in a residency, right, or an internship. They're not doctors yet. They're not doctors, and we all know that because it's on their name. So if that's not so obvious, we have to make sure that we share it with our clients. Okay. Performance evaluation. Social workers who have responsibility for evaluating the performance of others should fulfill such responsibility in a fair and considerate manner. Okay, so it needs to be fair and considerate, not because I don't like you, not any of those things. And she didn't even come to my Halloween party, so I'm not going to give you a passing score. Not okay. Not okay. Client records, that doesn't, just the same thing. It doesn't change at all. So again, social workers should take reasonable steps to ensure that documentation in electrical and paper records is accurate and reflects the services provided. And I know all of us have done this, and I know we still do this. And back in the day with pencil and paper, I still did it. We are not supposed to take client records home. Okay, it makes it more likely that someone would have access to those records, and that's a brief of confidentiality. I'm old enough that my supervisor would tell me to turn the folders over and put them in my trunk. Right, so I'm walking by, I could see them, and now I'm sure everything is all computerized. But the goal is that I have to protect their records. Okay. When it comes to storing records, it really depends on your state. So when I see that, what that means is follow state and local guidelines. Okay, because in some states it may be 7, in some states it may be 10, it may be 2. The test is for everybody, right? So they don't really care what your state says. We're going to follow local jurisdictions for this test. And pretty much when you see that, that's almost always going to be the answer, because there are some things that are really by state and some things some things that are at a national level. So there are some, Yeah, so just knowing that if it's a state issue, like FERPA, the Federal Family Education Protection Rights Act, that says that children under 18 and when they're in school, that parents can get access to their records all the time. However, as a social worker, you might see a question that says, so does that mean that social work records are available to the parent as well? And it depends on where you live, what your school jurisdiction says. So if I see the answer, follow local and jurisdictional guidelines, that's what I'm going to do. Billing, social workers should establish and maintain billing practices that reflect the nature and extent of services provided. Okay, I'm going to remind you, pro bono does not ever mean giving your services to an individual client for free. That is not what it means. Pro bono means I'm going to take this amazing gift I have of counseling or crisis, whatever is needed in the community. I'm going to do that. So if there's a bullying going on at my kid's school, then I'm going to go maybe do a seminar on bullying. Or even if my church asks me to, or a church asks me to give a presentation, that is pro bono. That is what we're supposed to do, is give our gifts, our things we've learned to the community, not an individual. Transferring clients, right? So when an individual is receiving services from another agency or colleague, and they contact the social worker for services, the social worker should carefully consider the client's needs before agreeing to provide services. To minimize possible confusion and conflict, social workers should discuss with the potential clients the nature of the client's current relationship with other service providers and the implications, including possible benefits of risk of entering into a relationship with a new provider. Okay. If a new client has been served by another agency or colleague, social workers should discuss with the client whether consultation with the previous service provider is in the client's best interest. So you'll see those questions. When I see the question that the person comes in and they've had 6 therapists before me, oh my gosh, my antennas are up, right? That's borderline. She's borderline. She's borderline. So one of the things I want to do is I really want to, assess. So what happened in your last relationship, or what happened, what went wrong? So I want to find out more information because I'm really assuming he's probably borderline. What else? Okay, so when the client has the right to see 2 counselors. They really do. We cannot stop them from seeing 2 counselors. And you see the question always that talks about a person is getting better, right? They have 2 counselors and they're getting better. What is the reason? The reason is because the counselors are talking to each other, not because they're seeing 2 counselors. So remember, we all have different theoretical orientations. So maybe I'm a behavioralist and the other person's a total Freudian. So that's not going to work. So we need to be on the same, we need to be at least talking, right? And be close to the same theoretical orientation. So if I'm doing REBT and the other therapist is doing CBT, right? We're on the same page. But it can definitely drive a client crazy if the 2 therapists are working with are totally on opposite ends. So it's not the fact that she has 2 therapists, it's the fact that they're talking to each other. That's what helps her get better. Okay. Social work administration should advocate within and outside the agency for adequate resources for client needs. Social workers should advocate for resource allocation procedures that are fair and open. When not all clients' needs can be met, an allocation procedure should be developed that is non-discriminatory and based on appropriate and consistently applied principles. So what that means is, we should treat everybody the same, right? However, that's social justice. But if we don't do that, if we don't have enough resources, then we have to come up with some sort of formula that who we decide where it goes to. You've seen that term probably, catchment area. So your catchment area is the geographical area that your agency serves, right? So most often I'm doing people in my catchment area, or maybe I'm doing a means test. like looking at how much they make. So all the things, but it needs to be the same procedure. Let's see here. D, social work administrators should take reasonable steps to ensure that the working environment for which they are responsible is consistent and encourages compliance with the NAS Code of Ethics. Social work administrators should take reasonable steps to eliminate any conditions in their organization that violate, interfere, or discourage compliance with the code. So I've seen the question about, you're working in this internship or you're working in this place. And it's an intern question. She's working an internship and she realizes that they are doing some like voodoo, like some things that are not conventional. Okay. And the question is, what should she do? So and the question states that, the supervisor's into it, everybody's aware of it, the board of directors is aware of it, and they all support this. So that is one. Not only do I need to quit, but I also need to take that up to the board of, take that up to the NSW Code of Ethics, right? As if it's the NSW board in my area. Because it's not enough just to make sure I'm got out of there safe, but I need to protect clients as well. That place is not running ethically and somebody needs to know. Okay. Social work administration and supervisors should take responsible steps to provide or arrange for continuing education and staff development for all staff with whom they are responsible. Continuing education and staff development should address current knowledge and emerging developments related to the social work practice and ethics. So supposedly, right, your agency, your supervisor should make sure that you get continuing education. I know that's not the right answer, what happens all the time in your office, but do know that is the right answer for the test. Okay. Commitment to my employers. Okay, so my job is to, make sure that my agency also runs effectively. I should work to improve agency policies and procedures, and to the efficacy and efficiency of their services. I should take reasonable steps to ensure the employers are aware of the social work ethical obligation. So especially when you're working in an agency where you're the only one of your profession. Right? So you're the only social worker and you're in the hospital, you're the only social worker in a school. So not only do we need to adhere to our code of ethics, but the people around us need to know that this is our code of ethics. So the principal that wants you to tell him everything before you call, Child Protective Services on a family, you remind him, I'm a social worker and that's unethical. Okay, so my client comes before my job. For the test. Social workers should not allow an employing organization's policies, procedures, or anything to, again, interfere with the code of ethics. Social workers should accept employment or arrange student field placement only in organizations that exercise fair practice. Okay. So probably when you went to school and now my college, my interns, when we place them with an agency, the agency has to agree to our terms when it comes to discrimination. That's not okay. Like, so we can't, and I live in Tennessee, so that's sometimes very difficult because our infrastructure is the church. But I can't purposely place someone in a church that goes against their beliefs, right? So we're looking at it, making sure that we place our students someplace that is practicing ethically, okay, and following all of those forms, and especially respecting minority populations. Okay. Labor disputes. Labor disputes are when like people walk out or boycott or things like that. So social workers may engage in organized action, including the formulation and participation in labor unions to improve services for clients and working conditions. Okay, so the Chicago school teachers went on strike a bit ago, and I don't know if social workers were in that same union. Okay, but if social workers are in the teachers union, right, you have the same right to strike that the teachers do. The action of social workers who are involved in labor management disputes, actions, or labor strikes should be guided by the professional values, ethical principles, and ethical standards. Reasonable differences of opinion exist between social workers concerning their primary obligation as professionals during actual or threatened labor strike or job action. Social workers should carefully examine the relevant issues and the possible impact on their clients before deciding to take a course of action. So all that means is, let's say, again, I'm a hospital social worker, and the nurses have decided to go on strike, or they're depending on going on strike. I need to make sure that my behavior does not impact my client. Okay, so it can't hurt my client. The client always, always, always comes first, no matter what. Okay. Again, to the profession, okay, social workers should strive to become and remain proficient in practical practices and the performance of professional functions. You should critically examine and keep current emerging knowledge and relevant to social work, right? So that is your job, is to, when things change, to be on it. So a lot of you many times have supervisors or bosses who, still practice the way we did like 20 years ago. And that's not okay. You probably went to college with a couple of professors who have updated their syllabus in the last 20 years. Okay, so that's not okay. The goal is that we're supposed to make sure that we're following the latest, right? The update on what's going on. So like the test now covers a lot of the LGBTIQ population, those questions, those terms. That's our job to keep up with that. Okay. So, and if you're looking like at older study guides, you won't find that because that's a pretty new thing. Okay. Discrimination. Okay. Discrimination is illegal. Remember that? So it is this prejudice are my thoughts, but discrimination is illegal. So social workers should not practice, condone, facilitate, or collaborate with any form of discrimination on the bias of race, nationality, national origin, color, sexual orientation, gender, gender expression or gender identity, age, marital status, political beliefs, religion, immigration status, or mental or physical abilities. All of those things, right? We cannot do. And we cannot work in an agency that does those things. That is not okay. Social workers should not permit their private conduct to interfere with their ability to fulfill their professional responsibilities. So sometimes your agency, you have to sign something on with your agency. But the goal is, do whatever you want to do on weekends. But if it makes the front page on Sunday, on the Monday morning news, then that probably is going to interfere with your ability to practice. Okay, so the code of ethics is not trying to tell you what to do in your personal time, but it just cannot interfere with what happens at school on Monday or at work on Monday. Okay, if you made the busted papers, you got a problem. Okay. I used to work for the school system. I've been a school social worker for many years. And the rule was if you got arrested, you were supposed to tell your principal before it made the news. So that was the rule of the school system, that at least the principal should know. I can't participate or condone or associate with any dishonesty, fraud, or deception. So when you see those questions about whether or not I should tell the client their diagnosis, so unless there's something in there that would hurt them, it is my responsibility to be honest with them. We're going to follow the rules of the agency because that's what we do. I can't, on my own personal problems or legal problems or any other problems, to jeopardize the best interest from which the people that have professional responsibility. I got to keep my stuff in check. Okay. Social workers whose personal problems, etc., interfere with your professional judgment, you should immediately seek consultation and take appropriate remedial actions by seeking professional help, making adjustments in workload, terminating practice, or taking away any other steps to protect the clients. So if I know that my stuff is getting in the way, Okay, then I should do everything I can, seek immediate consultation, take appropriate remedial actions, etc. Remember, in supervision, you cannot tell your supervisee that they need therapy. Okay, you are just there to provide support while they're working with the client. They're having a difficult client, then I can support that. If there's issues of transference or counter-transferency, the supervisor would support that. But if your life is falling apart, that's on you. Okay, that means you need to seek your own stuff. Okay, so then the supervisor's role is to run administrative or teacher administrative stuff, how to run the office, how to clock in, how many cases we see, all the policy of the agency. Their second job is to educate, right? So our goal is to, when you're in supervision, you should be learning something. And the third one, of course, is to then support, and that's the emotional support, not for my supervisee, but when they're working with a client. Okay, you know this. Don't misrepresent yourself. Don't tell everybody you're a doctor when you're not. You might go to jail for that, right? Solicitations. So social workers should not engage in solicitation of testimony endorsement. Okay, to use a client's prior statement in a testimonial. Okay, so what it means is if I have a past client, maybe he's 10 years down the road, right? If he would like to share his story about how the practice went, and I'm running my ad on Facebook, and there's no harm. There's nothing that looks like I'm pressuring to do that, then he can. But definitely a client that is in my current practice, I cannot do that, because there's a feel that maybe somehow I'm influencing them, or they think if they don't do what I ask, and somehow it'll affect their therapeutic relationship. So cannot do that. Okay. And when I do have the testimonies, I'm choosing to make sure that we use initials and we hide the identifying information. Okay. Ethical responsibilities, again, integrity of the profession. We should hold up the profession. We shouldn't be talking about people on the profession. We shouldn't be talking about other social workers. We shouldn't be on Facebook telling them the social work profession is just awful. Okay, that is not. We have to be. That's not good for our profession. If you don't like the profession, get out. Right. Social workers should contribute to the knowledge base of social work and share with colleagues their knowledge related to practice, research, and ethics. Okay. Research and evaluation. I know you all hate it, but ethically we're supposed to. If we don't do the research for our discipline, then someone else is going to do it, and it not be based on our discipline. Right? So the psychologist or the psychiatrist or somebody else can run a research study and tell us how we should follow, but that's not okay, because our profession is unique. So you really should. It's ethically, you're supposed to participate in research. Just saying. Okay. Remember, when people are participating in research, if you have clients or students, we're getting informed consent. And we're also making sure that the client knows they have the right to withdraw their consent at any time. When using technology, again, this is not new, this has always been here. When using technology for evaluation or research, I always need to ensure that the participant provides informed consent. And I should also make sure that they have access to technology, that they understand the technology. We're not trying to put undue burden on somebody, okay, just because the undue burden on someone because they don't have a laptop, or they don't have Wi-Fi, any of those things. The broader society, of course. Remember, our job is to be ethical to the broader society. So what that means is I should promote social, economic, political, and cultural values and institutions that are compatible with the realization of social justice. So wherever I'm at, I need to make sure that we understand that our job is to the ethical, the broader society is that's not okay, where we fight for social justice. Okay. You should facilitate and inform participation by the public in shaping social policies and institutions. So again, if there's a bill that's being passed that is directly affecting your client or directly affecting a group of clients, my job is to stand up for that, right? In public emergencies, we're supposed to volunteer. That's where pro bono comes in. So if there is a tornado or hurricane in your area, any of those things, then my job should be to go out and help in those public emergencies. Social engagement should engage in social and political action that seeks to ensure that all people have equal access to resources, employment services, everything else. Okay, that's many times the issue in community social work, right? We're trying to reallocate the resources because the people on the other side of the track always have the resources and my clients don't have it, and that's not okay. Okay, so just to kind of an idea, those are the bottom of the code of ethics that many times people don't get to. So just what the code of ethics says about supervision. So now let me just kind of give you some other info on supervision and what we do and what we don't do. Questions, guys? Okay, okay, 1 second.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you go over if they don't have a computer or what?
Yeah, so if they don't have access, then we need to make their services available without a computer. Okay, we can't punish them, right? Because they don't have a computer. So those same services should be available. And if that means, teaching the use of the public library, or things like that. Okay, but it's our job to make sure we're not. We teach people how to fish. We don't give them fish.
Right.
I'm not trying to give them a computer. I'm just trying to teach them how to fish. So knowing that there are public libraries that have computers that you can use.
Yeah, we do that. Mm-hmm.
Hold on. 1, 2. Okay, hang with me just for a few more minutes, guys, and we'll get to some questions and seeing how we apply this information. So this part talks about the percentage of the test questions where they should come from. So you see that direct and indirect practice are about 21%. Okay, so that not only includes the micro, that also includes the agency management pieces. Okay, case management, role playing. Okay, and so that's my I'm sorry, that was direct practice. The indirect practice here, okay, applying concepts of organizational theories, that's my X and Y theory, and we'll talk about that if you're not sure what that is. The impact of social legislation, our code of ethics says we're supposed to fight for that. Mobilizing community participation, techniques of social policy analysis, okay, techniques of working with large groups, the use of networking. Network is extremely important. Working with culturally competent groups, okay, so a lot of those things are in that indirect macro practice, okay. Sorry. Okie dokie. There's research. You need to have a session on research. It's not that bad, I swear. There's about 5 or 6 questions on there, and they are so worth it. Those, if you missed by 1 or 2, those are the freebie points. Research is always just going to be the easy questions, because research is the only thing that you need to remember, right? Memorize, because math is math is math. That'll never change. Okay. So then just some things on administration. I'm going to just kind of highlight some things that are, there's a lot in here that you don't need. So then, I can just make it all bigger. You will get a copy of this, and I try to take out the things that are not so important. Okay. So a definition, what does administration mean in social work? What it means is whoever is running the, I'm echoing, somebody else on? Hear me echoing? Okay, it got better, thanks. Okay, so the process of managing organizations and their various components, the organization goals are maximized and the agency and the organization survives and grows. Okay. The general act of directing the overall activities of the agency, the process of coordinating and integrating all services, the purpose of motivating and supervising work performed by other supervisors or other groups. So when it comes to formal organization and informal organization, we'll talk about this a little bit later, because formal organization, we're going to talk about the Weber's bureaucracy method, where there's formal and informal. Okay. So when it comes to administration, how I run my agency, there are 3 ways of supervision. I'm sorry, 3 ways of management. Okay. So the X is the one that's been around forever. The X is the scientific style, right? So that means scientific method. That means that we all follow the same rules. We come in, you put your your widgets in the widget hole, and work gets done really quickly though, right? So that is scientific management. It has been around forever and forever and forever. If you've heard that term, the Hawthorne theory or the Hawthorne effect, that's where this came from. The Hawthorne effect says that people work differently when someone is watching. And so this is how this style of management came from. So very authoritarian, repressive, tight controlled, no development, no personal development, right? You produce limited and depressed culture. So that's not good for the employee, but it's great for the organization, right? The X gets things done quickly. Your boss is sitting there, right? And you only get 10 minutes for a coffee break and you're coming back. So yes, the X works well. Managers who accept the X assumptions tend to structure, control, and closely supervise their clients. Okay. Depending heavily on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it concluded that the theory X assumption about the nature of man was generally inaccurate. So what it said before is that people would only work if they were forced to, that they wouldn't take pride in this. So the Y theory then is the humanitarian. Okay, so again, the X gets faster, that's a scientific, and Y is my humanistic theory. Okay, so the assumption is that people will do as they're supposed to do. Okay, so employees can view work as being as natural as rest or play. People will exercise self-direction and self-control if they're all committed on the same page. The average person can learn to accept, even seek responsibility. Okay, so the why theory, you'll see that the management supports the staff. So the staff, you come in and it's just kind of comfortable and great place to be, right? And the staff has these ideas, and then the management supports the staff. Okay, which sounds great and all, right? But if you've ever been in a room full of social workers or any other mental health providers who are trying to make a decision, oh my God, it could be like 12 years before we even got a policy out, right? So while this is the why, I say, yeah, yes, 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 because the social workers like it, it is not what's necessarily best for the agency. So the Y is the X gets the work done faster, and the Y makes the employees more happy. So if you see the X, the management is on top, and the employees, the staff, you just do as you're told. Okay, and then again, theory Y, the staff's on top, yay, 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 and the management supports the theory. Again, it takes much longer to get things done in this agency, but people are happier. Okay. If I own a business, we're going to the X theory. Get it done, get it done. That's not true. I'm very wide. Okay, and the other one is the Weber's bureaucracy method. And many of you that work in a big agency, you work under this. You're just a number. Okay. The goal of Weber's is that we follow that organizational chart. Okay. So the organizational chart, of course, that's usually it looks like it's a triangle shaped. Okay. So if your name has made this organizational chart, then you are part of the formal staff. Okay, so you got some letters after your name, and you got some things after your name. You're on the board, you're a director, then you are considered formal staff. Our informal staff members are the ones that play a huge role, but may not have their name on one of these agency charts. Okay, the Weber's bureaucracy. I work for the state of Georgia, and they tell me everything I'm supposed to do. We are just a number. Okay, definitely a hierarchical management structure. Hierarchical management structure. My dean's office is like 2 doors down from mine, but I can't walk in his office. I have to go through my assistant dean, right? And then my dean refers it, and the assistant dean refers it up to the dean, and the dean refers it up to the VP, right? God forbid I just called the VP myself. That wouldn't happen, right? You got to follow the chain of command. So then that's the hierarchical structure. So I've got to check with the people who have the titles to make sure this is okay. Division of labor. So if you work in a large agency, a hospital, a school system, don't you dare change a light bulb by yourself. That is someone's job, right? Don't do that. Do not fix the computer by yourself. Don't try to fix the printer. That is, you put a request into IT, because that's someone else's job. Stay in your job. Formal selection process, that means when you're being interviewed, it's a very formal process. Most people in this are very much career orientated. And again, so in education, most people are career oriented. The goal is to start off as maybe an adjunct teacher, and then work your way up to you really are, top of the heap. However, yes, that's what most systems that use the Webers would look like. Formal rules and very impersonal. So you are just a number, right? So there is a policy for everything. So if you're exposed to COVID, there's a policy. You follow the policy. If you need to, make a change on something, you have to follow the policy. So it's very, very impersonal, and it's the same for everybody. Okay, and this is the one that's been around forever as well. This is our bureaucratic method. Okay, there we go. Okay. So in social welfare organizations, many of my non-for-profits, there's just about them because of the multiple activities and the ambiguous goals, right? This week we're doing this, next week we're doing that. There's hardly ever enough money. Clinical services are often difficult to assess objectively. Rapidly changing staff due to burnout and salaries. So sound like the state, if you work for like defects or the Department of Children and Family Services. Little scientific effort. There's little scientific support for selecting a particular technology or treatment or routine. That's different in each situation. So every agency has to figure out what works for them, basically. Okay, so this is where I discussed the classical management. That's the X. Okay, and the humanitarian is the Y. And that term, Hawthorne effect, Western Hawthorne plant, it's Hawthorne effect. Have you ever seen that in any of your tests? It's in study material, I know, but has anyone seen it on the test? Okay, Hawthorne effect just as we work differently when someone is watching. Okay, so our structuralists, we don't teach anymore. We don't teach our decision-making people. Okay, I talked about Weber and the bureaucracy system. Okay, so we went over the exact same thing, the written rules, the hierarchy, who goes where, the advantages and the disadvantages. Okay, executive administrative functions. So there's usually some functions that look at management styles. So TQM, you might see that, probably not. But again, you'll see the mission statement. The mission statement is a very broad statement of what the agency does, right? So it's and you should all know your own mission statement from your client, right? And from your agency that you work out now. Okay. So then planning, yeah, all that stuff there. Okay, so part of running the agency, of course, is setting goals, determining resources and methods to be needed, allocating responsibility for reaching the goals, selecting measures of evaluation, and considering future anticipated conditions. So all of that is part of the administration functioning if you're in supervision. Okay. I talked about formal organization, right? Those are the people that follow the rules, set the rules. The informal people, right? That refers to volunteers, affiliations among employees. Sometimes it is you might see a question that they use the term line social worker, or like I'm just a regular social worker. I'm informal, or the policeman. I'm sorry, the policeman. The secretaries and the custodian, many times they're informal. They have a lot of knowledge, right? But they did make the hierarchy of the things that are important. They don't have a title after their name. The board of, so the organizational chart we talked about. Okay, so the board of directors, this always comes up. Okay, so the board of directors is, so there's, when we talk about working for a nonprofit, and that's what it's going to look like on the test, the board of directors, their job is to hire and fire the CEO mainly. Okay, so where we go. Okay, so in nonprofit organizations, the organization chart and the board of directors is at the top. So he hires and fires the CEO. So there's a check, right, with the director at the top. So the board establishes legal existence of the agency. So in order to actually have an agency, you have to have a board, right? Okay, and their goal is to set broad agency policies, not the day-to-day running, right? So if we decide we're going to seek grant money for adolescents, so they're going to approve and discuss the broader agency things. Okay. Inspire confidence inspire community confidence in the agency, right? I'm always fighting for that agency. So account for funds and approves the agency budget. So yeah, so if you're going to give everybody raises, right? If you need a piece of equipment or something huge like that, you're going to then go to the board. So the goal is to stop the CEO or the director from spending money as she chooses. It's the check and the checks and balance part. Okay, but again, you do not know them. They only usually meet like twice a year. So you don't know them. They may have come through your office once or twice. They are not paid staff people. They are not writing a check. Yes, they support the agency at their yearly or twice yearly a funding event, right? Their charity event. You do that, but you do not, you're not writing a check. Well, I mean, you may write a check, but it's not like, you're supporting the agency. They're regular people. I'm on the board of several agencies, just regular people. Okay. In general, okay, so the HR department, and so that used to be under the administration part, but now it's usually under HR. Recruit and select personnel, create a rational, easy to understand, fair structure, committees, form committees, things like that. Okay. And again, leadership aspects, guiding the work of the staff, using authority in a sensitive way, delegating responsibilities effectively. Okay. These you might see. Okay. So these are different ways of power. You may see it in a group setting. You might also see it in an agency setting. So I'll make it just a little bit bigger there. Okay, so the kinds of power are reward power. Okay, so if I'm the boss or I'm the supervisor, I can use reward power. That, if you do what you're supposed to do, you get bonus pay. If you see more clients than you should, you get bonus pay. Coercive, and that means evaluate, correct, and discipline employees who are unable to respond to minimal work requirements. The coercive is, I've always got my thumb on your head, right? If you don't do this right, I'll fire you. If you don't do this, I'm using my position of power, right, to try to get you what I think you should do. Expert. So in an agency, let's say that there is someone who is an expert grant writer, right? So she has power because she's an expert in that area. So that's what we're looking for. So she plays a role of power in that person, in that group. Status. The position on your organization chart, right? So just because I have that title, right? I have some power. Charisma, of course, I'm charming someone, right? To kind of, oh, yes, me, come on, hang out with me, do what I say. There's another term called referent power. Referent power means you have power because you have a relationship with the person in charge. So maybe your husbands play golf together, or you have lunch with the boss a couple times. So you've got some power because of the relationship. Okay. These terms again you might see. Okay, so instrumental. That means administrative actions aimed at achieving the organizational goals. Okay, that's instrumental. Expressive, when the administrative actions and concerns about staff are maintaining high employee morality. And autocratic. So autocratic or authoritarian. Autocratic is, I'm in charge. Of the dictatorship. The authoritarian, the strict parenting. So administration uses power to direct in a bossy and arbitrary manner. They don't solicit any input from the staff, and we don't like that. So whenever there's a question that there's a change that has to be made in policy or something in the agency, we always want to seek input from the staff, the same way that we would seek input from a client when we're making other changes, right? I know you'll see a lot of step-by-step things that you should do. And when it comes to certain types of policies, in general, you're still going to use that social work model, the social work problem solving. So I'm going to assess, right? If I'm moving into the community, I'm going to do a needs assessment, right? So I'm going to make sure that I include the community. We're going to plan with the community, not for the community. The assumption is that I won't live there in the community setting. These terms, a couple of these, probably you've seen these on the test as well. So budgeting, we talked about that a little bit earlier. So line item budget means it has to stay in that line. You all do your budgets at home, right? And things have to stay in the line. I cannot go buy, a new Michael Kors purse with the mortgage payment, right? It has to stay in that line. So in my agency or our system, there was an opportunity. We had money to hire staff last year, right? But we couldn't hire staff because of COVID. So that money went back to the general funding. So it has to be spent in that line. And if I don't spend it in that line, then I'm probably going to lose it. Okay. So program or financial budgeting, it really is looking at your allocations, the things that you're taking in and the things you're putting out. Zero-based budgeting is exactly what that means. So if you're a new program, you're just starting and you're waiting on some grant money, you have no money. Or if you're working in an agency that has like a fiscal year, so your fiscal year ends in like June 30th, and new money isn't sent out to like the 1st of August. So during that amount of time, you're zero-based budgeting. And most agencies have prepared for that, right? And have gotten all the supplies and things they need. But at that point, there's not any extra spending money. The flow chart, that just really talks about how the agency works. So you come in, you get screened, and then you do this, and you do that, and then you do this. That's how the agency works. Who gets the next one? How do we decide that? My below the line costs, you'll see those. Okay, so known as the non-personnel costs. So those are my below the line things. Take some of these out that we don't need. Okay, we talked about cost benefit analysis. So cost benefit is I am at the end of the program, I'm analyzing and I'm seeing, did my money, the way my money spent, was it effective? Did it stop, did it lower the rates of COVID? Did it stop teen pregnancy? So you gave me this grant money, and at the end, we're valuing it on how effective we were, okay? The other one, of course, is cost. I'm sorry, that's cost benefit. The other one is cost effectiveness. Cost benefit is money for money. Cost effectiveness is money for services. Okay, that's down here too. Okay. Okay, I'll come back and put cost effectiveness in there. I think I might have erased it. What else? Efficiency. So one of the goals is measuring the efficiency. Efficiency means, did we use the money, the resources that we had wisely? Okay. The reason for program evaluations. Okay. And this also talks about the steps in program evaluation. I haven't seen a lot of those on the test, but if you have, be sure that you go back and pick those up. When it comes to my evaluations, okay, so my summative and my formative, those are how I'm going to evaluate the policy at the end of the program. Okay, so the summative is going to be the end. So if someone gives us grant money and we are supposed to, we use this grant money to come up with a program for an after-school program. So the summative is the end. That is the summary after the program. Think of the sum, the summary. Okay. The formative is when it's forming. So when I am forming a new agency, okay, formative, talking myself. Okay, so the formative is as it is forming. So we're coming up with these goals and plans. So it can happen in the beginning, right? Or it can also happen later on when we're like halfway through the program and I'm realizing this isn't working. Okay, so formative is while it's forming. You might also see the term when it comes to a program evaluation, you can only use a quasi-experimental. So a true experiment has both, two groups and they're randomized, right? So I've got the control group, right? And I've got the control group and the experimental group. They're randomized. So the control group gets nothing and the other group gets the medication. So that's what those look like. They're randomized. I can't do that in my agency. I can't have someone who's coming in and this whole time, they've been getting Prozac and suddenly I change their medication without them knowing. So quasi is not randomized. I can ask people, hey, would you like to be in this research project? Or we've got a new medication we're trying. Would you like to try it? So then, yes, that's okay. That's quasi because it's not randomized. So we can do that in an agency. That's the only type you can do. Over some things. Okay, I mentioned before the types of supervision. Okay, so then essentially an administrative activity directed at ensuring that the work will be accomplished to the acceptable standards. Okay, so this is what supervisors should do. And like I said, it's very similar to direct practice. So the way that I'm working with my client is the same way that my supervisor should be working with the supervisee. So administrative supervision, like I said, making sure you know how the office functions. What do we do? What's the plan? Educational supervision, my job is to educate, right? So, we've got a seminar coming up on LGBTQI communities, things like that, making sure that my supervisees are always aware of what's going on, the newest changes, and supportive. I'm assisting the worker in addressing professional organizational stressors. It is not about their personal life. That is not my job. Okay. It talks about group supervision and the advantages and disadvantages of group supervision. Okay. And of course, individual supervision is always the best, right? Because I can do one-on-one, you can teach me to do anything. You might see peer supervision. Peer supervision is that you're all the same. Okay, no one is any smarter than anybody else. So we can discuss cases, we can brainstorm, but we're all on the same plate. These leadership theories, these are the theories, you've probably seen them other places. Authoritarian, democratic, or laissez-faire. Okay, the same as those parenting skills. My authoritarian tells you exactly what to do. The democratic, that's kind of the talkative kind of parenting, right? So we're working together. We're going to vote on things. Laissez-faire. So literally translated, it means fairly lazy. But this style of management means that I don't have to work so hard as a supervisor because my employees are doing what they're supposed to do. Right? They do what they're supposed to do. They don't need me over their head every 5 minutes telling them what to do or check up after them. So those are the types of leaderships. Okay, we're going to go some questions now. You'll get this. There are other things that you might want to go over. Check that out. Some of the terms, like the host agency. Okay, so if you're the host agency, that means that whatever upcoming event, whatever is going on, your agency is hosting it. A host agency might invite other agencies to do networking, right? Because that's important for the host agency. Okay, I went over a lot there, a lot. So things you've heard before, I've totally bored you to death, and all these will never be on my test. Thoughts? Oh gosh, you finally stopped talking? Okay, you're not a very talkative group tonight. We're going to see what it looks like in some questions. Really though, and you can answer in the chat box. So these are terms that you're familiar with. Have you seen them before? Yes, no in the chat box, nod, raise your hand, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Still no response. Gosh. Okay, I bored them all to sleep. Alberto, have you heard most of these terms before?
Yeah.
Anything?
So.
Go ahead. Do you recall seeing them on the test?
The Weber's bureaucracy.
Okay, good.
Model X, Model Y, for sure.
Yeah.
I did not know those before.
Okay, very good. Somebody else has taken the test before. Have you seen some of those things and maybe didn't know what it was, or this was just a reminder or refresher?
I've seen quite a few of the administration questions and direct and indirect, and those ones, the ones that took me over.
Okay.
As you say, being up to date with LGBTQ terms, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I do think first of all, most of us start off in micro practice and we never plan on going into any kind of macro practice. I don't want to do that. I don't want to change policies. I don't want to do that. Really, really important. So again, if we don't do our own research, somebody else is going to come in and do it for us. And also, they're probably not all of our study material covers the administrative type, the administrative part. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and if you will put your answers in the chat box, it makes it so much easier. Okay, this one you should make it bigger for you. Okay, so number 2, a social worker learns that a coworker who is often under the influence of drugs or alcohol is seeing clients. The social worker should, and this is straight from the Code of Ethics. What do I do? Okay. In the chat box, do I see some answers? There we go. Exactly. Number two. Okay. So do nothing. That's never the right answer. Okay. And I don't need to speak to a supervisor until I've gone to my colleague first. And again, it's about obtaining assistance, not trying to get them in trouble. I'm really just trying to help them. Okay. Number 3, in the informal organization of a social work agency, right? The informal is not the people on the who get the hierarchy. One would not expect to find what? Okay, so what would you not expect to find in the informal? So 3 of these would be definitely part of the formal leadership. 1 would not be. Mutual assistance, social ranking, consensus, or clinic communication. Oh, we're stumped on this one, huh? Okay, so again, think about the formal, right? The formal people on the chart. Important, look at me. It's got letters after my name. So mutual assistance, most definitely, right? And informal, we've got mutual assistance, right? We're usually in the same boat. We're trying to help each other. Social ranking. Okay, so even in the informal parts of the agency, there's still some social ranking. Right? I've been here 12 years longer than you have. I might not be on the top of the board yet, right? But I know what I'm doing. I've been here longer than you have. Consensus is agreement. Okay, so many times when we're and consensus is not the same as the majority wins. So in community terms, we're always using consensus. That means can we all get along with it? Okay. So when I think about like informal organizations, I think about even outside of social work agency, I think about like the people who are in the union who are trying to get together and they want a raise. Like the Chicago's teachers union, they were all on the same page, right? It wasn't the administrators at the top, they were the teachers. So in order to make things happen, you need to have consensus between the informal organization people. The answer is 8, printed communication. Anyone want to give me a guess why?
Usually wouldn't have that available to you in that situation.
Well, we're probably, when we're the informal staff, we're probably not the one who's sending out the email to everybody, right? We're keeping it to ourselves. So maybe not putting some of those things in writing, our thoughts, our beliefs. Printed communication or emailed communication, you know, when you get a letter from the dean or the CO, that means you do something. Okay, so the people who have the power wouldn't necessarily have that, who don't have the power. Okay. Number 4, the most effective method of ensuring future funding for an agency is to what? Okay, A, write proposals to large foundations. 2, make broad-based efforts directed at attracting many small contributions. 3, concentrate on a few very large private contributions. Or 4, sponsor a concert. I know many of you have worked for agencies that you had to do some funding. That's part of social work, right? So then the most effective way of ensuring. Okay, Melinda, Linda, well, did you write 2 and 1? 1 and 2? Okay, so one of the reasons a lot of agencies closed is because when COVID hit, their major funder no longer had the money. Right, so suddenly we've the big companies that have always been funding, always giving extra money to probably sponsored by Walmart or Lowe's or things like that, the big box stores. So when COVID hit, and they were really keeping their heads above water, right? So giving to this organization wasn't high on their list. So if I get one big one and they pull out, I'm in trouble. So having a couple of small ones is much better. Okay, so the answer is 2. Okay, see where I'm going with that? Like, whoa, makes sense? Number 7. Because of an unexpected upsurge of migrant workers during the summer, the director of a small social agency must cancel August vacations. He expects the decision will be met with resistance and dissent. DSSENT, that just means we're fighting against each other. Okay, to effectively, that they won't agree. Dissent is like there's going to be some rumblings. To engage staff effectively, what should he do? Okay, so he is the, he's a director. Okay, and staff vacations have probably been planned, and now he's got to tell them, oh my gosh, we can't do this. So to engage the staff effectively, he should A, send a memorandum to the staff describing the change and the reason. 2, hold a general staff meeting where the issue is noted as an agenda item. 3, discuss the issue with subordinates and allow for questions, alternate possibilities, and objections. Or 4, discourage dissonance within the informal structure by asking the supervisors and the informal leaders to meet with the director. What is the best way to engage my staff? And remember, the supervisor or supervisee thing works the same way as you would with your client. Okay, so if I'm going to make a change or something, with my client, so what happens? I see a 3, I see a 4. Okay, so all of us, right? All of us have been in meetings where, we just get an email. Your Christmas vacation is canceled, and it's an email. And it's probably on Friday at the end of the day. Oh, that's so awful. That is so awful, right? We don't want to do one. Hold a general staff meeting where the issue is noted as an agenda item. Okay, so I see that, we're running out of paper towels. We need more number 2 pencils. Mary Sue is out sick. And by the way, all your vacations have been canceled. No, we don't want that either. Okay. So I should be down to 3 or 4, right? I always get down to the 2 easily. And then I'm going to compare the 2 to each other. Okay, so discuss the issue with subordinates and allow for questions, alternative possibilities and objections, or discourage a dissent, within the informal structure by asking the supervisors and informal leaders to meet with the director. Okay, so 3 is the best answer, right? Let's have a meeting and come up with some other answers. These are the facts. The facts is, we've had an upsurge of migrant workers and we need people, we need you to work. So how can we figure it out? Okay. We good on that one? That was 3. Questions? Talked about this one, number 9. A social worker has informal power derived from a strong relationship with their respected supervisor. This is an example of what? Referent, expert, positional, or legitimate? My chat box seems to be empty. Okay, that is referent power. So anytime I have a relationship with the boss, right, that's referent power. Like I said earlier, our husbands golf together, right? Or we go to the same church, right? So there's some power I have just because of the relationship. That's what that means. Okay. Groupthink. So that happens in agencies a lot. Groupthink is when agencies, everyone thinks the same way. So 10, a factor that contributes to the development of groupthink mentality within a policy-making committee is what? So which of these contributes to the development of groupthink? Let me remind you what groupthink is in case you're not sure. Okay, I like this one. So see my screen? Yeah. Okay. So in groupthink, the boss has some idea, right? Oh my goodness, you know what? I think that we should probably always just, wear our pajamas on Fridays. Let's get more relaxed. Let's just come in our pajamas, right? And everybody's thinking, oh my God, no way, no how, please no. But no one says anything. And we don't say anything because we don't want to rock the boat. We've all done this. We probably still do it, right? You've got a group of friends and they want to go out for lunch together. And you're like, I don't really want to go out. It's cold. It's snowy. I want to stay in. Oh, come on, come with us. And we give in just because we don't want to rock the boat. So then that is a groupthink. The term is called confederate. A confederate is someone they put into place to kind of pretend to be a member. So if you have, sometimes they'll hire a confederate, someone who will disagree with him purposely, because if one person disagrees, then more than likely somebody else will disagree. Okay, so that is groupthink. Okay, so then back to my question. The factor that contributes to the development of groupthink mentality when I'm on a committee is what? Which one of these contributes to groupthink? Apathy means I don't really care. Hostility is, we're mean to each other, okay? Competition, of course, we're competing. And amicability means let's all get along, right? I don't want to rock the boat. So that the answer is 4, amicability. And I'll say a lot of times, this test is based on having a high vocabulary. That is not a clinical term. It's not. So if you don't know that term and things that we're going through, be sure that you go back and you learn them. It is written at a very, very high level of verbiage. The assumption is you have a master's degree and you know this terminology. So this is not anything you'd find in a textbook. It's just a matter of increasing your verbal skills, increasing your word knowledge. So I always say, the experts always say read, right? Read. Not a reader, never have been. Love to be read too, but anyway. So, but a couple of things, if you like to read. We keep our closed captioning on the TV at home, so we can always see the words. Okay, because it's really important. And one of the things to pass this test is if I didn't know what that word meant, I would have missed the question, even if I know what the groupthink is, because groupthink is the clinical term. But if I didn't know what amicability meant, I'd miss the test. I missed the question. Okay. 11, a board function that is inappropriate except in rare instances is what? Fundraising, policy formulation, monitoring day-to-day activities, establishing new organizational goals. That is correct. Okay. Monitoring day-to-day activities. Only if they have to, right? They fire the CEO and they have no one else to put in their place, so they might. So 12, we talk about systems theory. Many times we talk about family systems theory, but in an agency, right, there's also a system. Everything that runs is connected to each other. So 12, a concept that does not derive from systems theory is what? Which one does not derive from systems theory? Yes, it's 4. 4. Yes. That does not come from systems theory. Remember, whether it is a system in general, a family system, any of those things, the system is made up by its parts. We most often talk about family systems. Okay. And in a family system, so this is their macro, right? The things around them, the things that come in the system to support this, right? So then in this family system, input is coming to support this family. It can be church and school and friends and grandparents and all those things that input to help this family become a really great family. The input inside turns to throughput. So throughput literally means the input runs through the system. So throughput would be, if, dad's got a good job and mom is a stay-at-home mom, right? She takes care of the kids. Dinner has to come home. She has to come home to dinner, things like that. That's how their family runs, but they can only run that way because of the input. So input comes in, throughput goes through, and output goes out. So what a healthy family would put out to the environment, right, to the next system. So to school, the kids are doing well in school. To the office, right, dad's doing well in his office. So all of those things are things that this healthy family will put out to the next system. So if this system dies, right, so if the input dies, so let's say, mom and dad both become alcoholics. So we know in alcoholic families, they don't have a lot of friends over, do they? They don't, right? Well, anyone to know, because, so then the input, the friends are going to stop coming over. Dad may eventually lose his job. right? Mom may do something, and then this input is going to stop. Friends aren't coming over anymore. So once it stops, it's called entropy. Entropy is when the system begins to slow down, get disorganized, and eventually die. Okay. And then negative entropy. So let's say with this family. So in this family, then, so if mom and dad continue the path that they're on, you know what? The family's going to fall apart. The kids are going to start coming to school, or they'll come to school smelly and you know, unfed. Someone will call Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services will come in and you know, we'll try to take the kids, right? If we don't do anything, this entropy will continue and the family will fall apart. So to negate the entropy, to stop the dying process, that's called negative entropy. So negative entropy is a good thing. You're stopping the dying process. Okay, so, you know, Susie, I'm gonna say Sam. Sam comes in wearing his Superman cape. He's a super social worker. He comes in, right? Gets mom and dad into rehab, gets the kids, you know, some big brother, big sister, gets grandma back in the house, all those things. And then, you know, the system that can come back alive. So this is family systems theory, but anytime systems theory, whether it's an agency, whether it's in, you know, my bike. My bike is a system. If, you know, if I get a kink in the chain, the whole bike doesn't run. Okay, so those terms that you almost always see on there. Look at number 16. Oops. Sorry, I lost it. Okay, there we go. A social worker presents a request to her supervisor to prolong services to a client. Adding additional sessions contravenes agent service guidelines. Okay, that means it goes against. Okay, so the supervisor's most appropriate response is what? Okay, so social worker comes up to her supervisor and she says, hey, you know what? I've got a client and you know, we normally only get 12 sessions, but I really need 2 more sessions. But our guideline only calls for 12. So the supervisor's most appropriate response would be, okay, how come you're raising this issue when you know it differs from the agency policy? Let's go see the administrator. The issue appears to rise from counter-transference from the client. So let's look at it. There's nothing in there to support counter-transference, right? Okay. And I wish I could go along with the request, but agency policy prevents. Exactly. Can you provide? So as a supervisor, I have to follow the agency guidelines, right? I can't just say, oh, everybody get extra hours or extra time, but I can say, okay, you know, that's normally against our policy. Let's look at this case specifically. Okay. There's nothing in there about counter-transference. There's something about feelings that are getting in the way. 24. A social worker in a family agency is served with a court order requiring her to produce the case records of a client involved in a divorce proceeding. The social worker would first. What would you do first? If you're in a family agency and you call the agency's attorney before going up the chain of command, your supervisor is going to kill you. Okay, the key is in the question, it's a reading test, remember? She works in a family agency. Okay, so we've always, the code of ethics says, right, if we get a subpoena, we get a court order, this is what we do. But when it clearly states she works in a family agency, I need to go up the chain of command. Can you imagine calling the agency's attorney and your boss finding out the next day? Ooh, it hit the fan. Okay, so we know that there's a code of ethics, we know what it says, and we know that if, and most of the times it does say, check with the client, things like that. But there's a reading test. It is a reading test. And the fact that I work in an agency, I follow the chain of command. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we good with that one? Surprise you a bit? Okay, because I'm always going to tell you, it's a reading test. It's a reading test. Look at that one, number 40. A social worker is consistently late, fails to finish work on time, and completes forms carelessly. Though aware of the situation for some time, the supervisor does not confront the issue. Finally, the supervisor raises the worker's performance issues at a supervisory conference. The supervisee feels relieved and begins to discuss personal and family problems that have interfered with work. To move the discussion along relevant lines, a supervisor might interject what? Okay, and this is a reading test, and it's not the real world, because most people are like, oh, it's okay, I know, I understand. I understand how difficult it is to function under these circumstances. 2, I understand how difficult getting back to the issue, but I understand how difficult getting back to the issues I raised, but have you considered a leave of absence? Or 4, I know how difficult this must be. I've had similar difficulties. Okay, I understand how difficult this must be and get back to the issues. So answers 2. Okay, so like anything else, I'm not going to ignore the fact that he has issues at home, right? I'm not going to ignore it. And I'm not even going to say how hard it is to function. I'm just going to say, I understand you're having difficulty, but let's go back to the issue we discussed. Okay, so the same way that you would treat a client. The client comes in and you have something you're planning to discuss, right? And he says, well, I want to talk about this. So I'm going to go ahead and where the client start, the client is at, so the client is. But however, let's get back to the issue. Okay. Okay, guys, I got to wrap you up. Again, you will get a copy of the questions and the answers.